for the glory of God and the good of others, basically. And that's why I started Roma Boots. Little did I know that I would see people in various parts of the world wearing Roma Boots, but it was so cool to see that. In that moment, I was like, wow, Roma Boots, my logo, my brand. And I said, if only I can repeat this experience all over Romania. And then the God said, no, I'll do it. I'll multiply it all over the world. We have various, partnerships that we've had, with Sadie Robertson, and the whole Tech Dynasty crew there. We took the whole family to Guatemala with us in 2015. It was just a remarkable experience. We were in Romania with former Miss Universe, Demi Tebow, Tim Tebow's wife, donating 100,000 boots there too. Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war. Lionsgate reached out and said, hey, we love your message of hope and kindness. And, we're producing this motion picture based on this book. Of course, for the movie premiere, I took Ilona to LA, to Hollywood, and we were able to hang out with all the cast and Owen Wilson, who actually is from Dallas. I got to meet him, and he was the father there, Augie's father. But it was really a cool story how that all came to be. I don't know if I can say this on the podcast, if it's legal to say it. But we ended up stealing our boots back, stealing our own boots from this warehouse so we can give them to the kids living in poverty. So I said, what's motivating me? What's motivating me? Because if it's love, it doesn't matter what, it'll succeed, even during a recession, I'm going to be able to help people. But if it's not love, if it's greed, if it's building a name for myself, even though I may succeed seemingly, it's going to crash and it's not going to bring glory to God. And I remember saying, I want whatever I do to bring glory to God. And I want whatever I do to be good for others. So, for the glory of God and the good of others, basically. And that's why I started Roma Boots. And I finally quit Neiman Marcus on April 3rd, 2010. Happened to be my 27th birthday. I quit Neiman Marcus. It was a Saturday. And even prior to quitting Neiman's, I told some of my customers at Neiman Marcus that I was quitting to start this company. And immediately they came on board and they said, hey, we'd love to help. We'd love to help in any way that we can, and one was a graphic designer, another one was a good writer, and just like that, they made some intros for me. And then I started, with some boots that I was very much inspired by Tom's and by Hunter and Burberry. I looked at the wellies. I really liked the look of them, the idea. And that's how Roma Boots started. And I happened to have a friend from New York who I knew at Christ for the Nations. He was a rebel at Christ for the Nations. He used to be the one that smoked pot on campus, or he ended up getting kicked out of CFNI. And I found out that he changed his life, and now he's doing YWAM, and he's living in China. And so I reached out to him, and I said, hey, I reached out to several factories in Brazil and Romania, but I'm getting a lot of feedback from China, and I want to make a trip there, and I want to be able to see if I can find a supplier. And so I flew to China. I stayed with Phil. I went and visited several factories, and I met several of these agents. I didn't like the factories that I visited at first. I was like, man, this is difficult. And I'll never forget, before I left Neiman Marcus, my GM at Neiman said, man, this is not a good idea. You starting this company is not a good idea. Very shrewd, businessman, Malcolm Rubin, very, very good. He was very successful. At Neiman's, he grew that store to number one. But I felt like what he was telling me was not something that discouraged me. He said, we're in the middle of a recession. It's going to take you at least a few months to get prototypes produced. To get this thing off the ground, it'll take you a few years. And I initially was like, you may be right, but I know something bigger in my heart is motivating me to do this. Maybe he was thinking realistically or practically. So here I am in China visiting these factories. And after visiting several factories, I'm like, Malcolm Rubin was right. Malcolm Rubin was right. I'm like, this is a terrible idea. And 2 days before returning back to the US, I reached out to a friend of mine who was translating my book, Goodbye Transylvania, into Mandarin. She's a Chinese lady living in LA. I had met her at my sister's orphanage in Călăraș, Romania. And she read my book and loved it, said, I'm going to translate it into Mandarin. And I said, wow. And she says something to me in the email. She's like, hey, you should go look in this area or whatever. Have you tried Nanjing or whatever? I'm telling her I'm there. I'm in China. And so one more chance, and I reach out to somebody in Nanjing. His name is Kevin Chen Lei. I reach out and he said, I could meet you. He said, take the train, meet me. Same age as I am. He's like, meet me in Nanjing. I'll come pick you up from the train station. To this very day, I work with Chen Lei. He's a brother to me. His family. He was not Christian. He's now a Christian. He's been to Dallas. He gave me the honor of naming his son. We started a relationship. I would play the Bible, the book of John in Mandarin on the way to the factory. And then he finally became a believer. And now he's like a dear brother. And so it just something remarkable, happened there. And thank God I didn't give up. It was that one last email that I sent, and they produce all my boots. And when they produced the boots, in fact, a few years ago, there was a natural disaster in China, and World Vision China asked us for boots, and the factory produced 5,000 boots for free and donated them to World Vision on behalf of Roma because they were so transformed by our mission, what we do. And when these people are producing our boots there at the factory, they're always in smiles. And I go there quite a bit. I used to go a couple times a year, but just a beautiful story that came out of that. And we said that from the start. We said, whether it's photographer, whether it's designers, whether it's people working operations, packing, pick and packing, whoever is involved with Roma on any given capacity, I said, I want their lives to be touched by what we're doing and their lives to be better off because of having come in contact with Roma and what we're doing. I want their lives to be inspired, to be brightened by coming in contact with us, because that's not just the people receiving the boots, but the people that, are associated with us on any level should be able to benefit from it. So anyway, I found I'm jumping ahead over here a little bit, but I found this supplier. And after finding this supplier in China, I said, we want to be able to produce 10,000 boots, 5,000 to sell, 5,000 to donate. And again, no money, needed money. So thank God I have a big family, a lot of siblings. So I had to come up with
So you went to China with not having money to pay for the boots. You just kind of went to find a supplier.
yeah, I went to find a supplier, and then they say, hey, the minimum orders is 5,000 or 5,000 boots. And so I'm like, okay, well then I got to do 5,000. If I'm going to do 5,000 to sell, we'll produce these boots that are nice, boots that I would need to sell in the US. And we decided to do women's boots for sale, kind of like modeled after the Hunter Burberry boots. And then another 5,000 boots that we would then donate. And so kids' boots is what we were targeting. And so I got the samples in. I remember when that UPS truck or UPS truck pulled to my house, and I'm like, I looked at the boots and I opened them up, and I'm like, are people in Dallas ever going to be wearing these boots? Little did I know that I would see people in various parts of the world wearing Roma boots, but it was so cool to see that. In that moment, I was like, wow, Roma boots, my logo, my brand. And so, again, we needed to produce the boots now. We were, through one of my customers from Neiman Marcus, we were introduced to this trade show. And when we were at that trade show, Again, I had no idea what a trade show was, even what wholesale was. But we had 5 booths, and up comes, this customer of mine from Neiman Marcus. She's like, "Well, this explains why I haven't seen you at Neiman's. Tell me what you're doing." And I'm like, "Oh, I started a boot company." She's like, "Oh, this is amazing. Tell me." And so I start sharing with her. She's like, "Do you know so and so?" And I'm like, "No." I go, "They're the editor of the Dallas Morning News, and she needs to do a story on you. This is fascinating." So she connects me to Tracy. Tracy's the editor of the Dallas Morning News. Tracy tells me, "Come to the studio." And I had sold my car. I had put these on Craigslist. I had pawned things. I borrowed money from every sibling to get the production of these 5,000 boots going. 30% is what I needed to pay down the deposit to get the production going. But I didn't have a car. I have a little scooter and I have a backpack. So I'm driving to the Dallas Morning News studios in my little scooter with my backpack on. And man, I get there and I'm thinking they're going to take some pictures of the boots and that's it. And yeah, I get there and they take pictures of the boots. But Tracy's like, tell me more about Roma. And I like, "Samuel, we got to do a bigger story on this. You got to get in here with the boots. We got to make this into a bigger story." So this was October 2010. It was that same year that I started, October 2010. It's just so amazing. So many great things happened in the month of October. But in October of 2010, I'm there in the studios. They're taking a picture. They're hearing my story. And that's how we got started. And I get back to my scooter, and I'm driving my scooter home, and it breaks down on the freeway. And I'm like, it was crazy. And then my sister comes, picks me up, and a few days later, I go to pick up my scooter, and my scooter is gone. So I'm like, I don't have a scooter, I don't have any of this. But in the midst of all of this, something beautiful happens. And once again, I get a call from Neiman Marcus, and they say, "Hey, are you still are you available at all?" And I'm like, "Well, I started my company, and I borrowed money from family and friends, and I sold my car and everything, and I had a little scooter, but now my scooter's gone. So I guess I need to come back, if I could juggle both." So I did that. I ended up going back to Neiman Marcus so I can pay off my family and friends that I borrowed money from so we can get the production of boots going and or to finalize production. And that was actually a good move to go back to Neiman's because I was traveling for Neiman's. This time it wasn't at the store. So I was traveling to all these different stores as the national director of first, and I'm running Roma at the same time. And it was really beautiful to be able to kind of juggle that. And I did that from 2010 all the way to 2014. It was all a labor of love. I was meeting people at Neiman's that were helping me with Roma. I had interns from SMU and TCU that were kind of running my store because I was also something I left out here, but I was given a space right across from Neiman Marcus, a free space that runs for $10,000 a month where I could run my business. So to this day, we have that space. It was the most amazing miracle. And we have Nordstrom Rack to our right. We have J. Crew to our left. We have Starbucks in front of us, and then right across the street, Neiman Marcus. And I have this 3,000 square foot space where I use for my warehouse, storefront, and everything. Total miracle.
Okay.
Again, a labor of love. True story. It's still open. I have
I
somebody
think I
running
went
it
to
for me.
that. I don't know if it's the same place, but I went
Yeah.
to your store. Is that
Yeah.
the place?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a
Never had
nice area. That's a nice mall.
beautiful area, and it was just a gift from God. I mean, I can go on and on. There's been so many miracles that happened along the way, confirming that what I was doing was something that God had his hands on. And I always said, "God, I want this to give you glory. I want this to help others." And so just to fast forward, Neiman Marcus calls me back. I,
Let me
I
ask
tell
you
them I
one
need,
more before we hold your thought just for a sec. I want to ask you in that because you painted like such a beautiful picture driving your scooter to the news station. and sort of being maybe even in China and not finding, look, I could imagine the imposter syndrome that was like super kicking in maybe. You're like, I don't have a car, I'm going to this guy's, what the heck I don't know, I can imagine because I being an entrepreneur, if you can mention, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs deal with that. And what do you, how did you get over that hump in your mind, right? Because you probably felt like giving up. I mean, your motorcycle breaks down, your scooter.
I told you something happened when I at Neiman Marcus when I decided that I want to do this, and I said, God, if it's your, if it's to give you glory, if my motivation is love, I said nothing can stand in the way. Because there was times that I wanted to leave Neiman Marcus, but I wanted all the ducks to be in a row. I wanted to make sure I had plenty of money. We did have a nice house, in Dallas at the time. But I'm thinking to myself, I want to be able to have everything perfect. I have to have this business plan, whatever. And that prevented me from doing anything because I wanted everything to be perfect and then to leave. And finally, after meeting Blake, and that was a catalyst moment, and seeing that he's not doing this, he's not doing rain boots, nor did he have any interest because I pitched it to him. He later started doing the rain boots, but it didn't do very well for him, so he cut out rain boots. But um, I'm like, if I don't do it now, and if my motivation is love, nothing can stand in the way. It doesn't matter if we're in a recession. It doesn't matter what. And so that gave me so much impetus. That gave me so much drive. That just wanting to do that, God said, "You're gonna do it. You're gonna." So when I would face these setbacks, like I did in China, and I would get like bump, I would bounce back quickly. I would immediately feel like, no, I can still do it. I can go. And there was just like this force that kept me going. And I just kept going and going and going. I'm like, I'll keep fighting because it's not for me, it's for others. And I know people will benefit from this. And it was exciting also to see how many people along the way came and encouraged me. And when I would see all these miracles happening along the way, I'm like, this is great. I mean, that summer, that I started Roma Boots. I left Nima's April 3rd and started Roma. That summer was so difficult financially. We didn't have money. I was eating a lot of milk and cereal. And I still had two little kids. And my wife was obviously putting a lot of pressure on me, rightfully so. But I was broke, but I was just like, nothing mattered. I was so driven by this that I said, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it work. And just walking in faith and believing, day to day, that things were going to get better. So when Neiman's called me back, I went back. And guess what? The same day that I'm back in Neiman's, because I end up going to the Fort Worth store. There we have this big fur event. And dude, the Dallas Morning News, it was October 15th, pushes out the article. I had no idea how big that article was going to be. And I literally had a lady walk in the store and she's like, "You're the guy. You're the guy." I'm like, what's she about? She's like, "I just read your story. You're the boot guy." And she ends up buying a $20,000 chinchilla from me, which was crazy. And she's like, "Oh, I just read your story. That's so fascinating." And we had just launched our online store like a week before, RomaBoots.com. And the orders started coming in, even before the boots were produced, I mean, even before the boots had arrived in our warehouse. And I could just see the way God was orchestrating all these things. I'm like, man, this is really, really neat. And so I, I finished an email that day, and I get back home, and I'm like, I see my inbox was flooded. People started emailing me, "Oh, I read your story," and then going online and seeing Financial Times picked it up, and Romanian newspapers picked it up, and it was the first big story on Roma Boots, which was really, really cool. I think it was like Neiman Marcus alum starts boot company or gives poverty to the boot or something like that. And it was a great feature, like on the front page of the fashion side of the newspaper, and I'm like, man, this was really neat. And that paper was picked up by others. That story was picked up by others. I end up at the end of the month about to board a flight to China. I was still short $25,000. So I was going to look at the boots to inspect the boots. I'm already getting pre-orders for the boots online. I'm going to inspect the boots to make sure everything's fine and to come up with the 25,000. I'm literally boarding the flight to get on. And I think I was in Detroit, actually, either Detroit or Minneapolis, because that's where they had the direct flights to Shanghai. And as I'm boarding a flight, I get a call, and I take the call, and it says, "Hey, do you still need that $25,000?" And I'm like, "It's my uncle in Chicago." And I said, "Yes." He's like, "Send me your account number and I'll wire it to you." And I'm like, yeah, it was a miracle because I was going to China telling them that I'm gonna, inspect the boots and send them money so they could release the boots and send them here. And I didn't know. And so a day later, I'm in China and I was like, we're good, and we inspect the boots and everything. And then I'm back here and we're already getting orders. I'm traveling again. Fast forward, I'm going from all these different cities, with Neiman Marcus. And I'm like, I need a week off so I can go to Romania and distribute these boots. So we got American Airlines involved. They're shipping the boots to Romania, the 5,000 boots that we're donating for kids. We had the other boots that were here. And I think we were needing like $5,000. American Airlines was really generous to us. We had all the boots come in here, 10,000 boots. And then from here, we have 5,000 boots that are going to Romania. These are kids' boots. So Americans like, hey, because of what you're doing and whatnot, we're going to give you a really good discount here. But you have to come up with $5,000. That's like the bare minimum. So the lady that helped us get our house through Habitat for Humanity that would come and visit the Boys and Girls Club in Knoxville, I reached out to them and said, Samuel, you're giving back. You're finally giving back, because they knew I wanted to do that. And they said, we'd love to write a $5,000 check to cover this. So they paid for that first shipment of boots, And man, it was just really beautiful to see that all come together. November 29th is when the boots left to go to Romania. What day is that? That's the day that we were given hope. That's the day that we came to the U.S. November 29, 1990. And I was like, God really does have his finger in every detail. Exactly 20 years later to the day is when our first container of boots were shipped to Romania. And then I was like, that's fascinating. So every year we have this thing called Day of Hope with Roma Boots, which is a day that we say we give poverty a boot and we bring people hope through random acts of kindness, because that's the day that I was given hope in 1990. That's the day that we deployed hope from the U.S. to Romania through these 5,000 boots. And so I take off this week, the week of Christmas. I go to Romania and we go to Călăraș, where my sister had the orphanage. And we pull up in this gloomy, dark, and gray village. It was a Roma village. And man, that moment changed my life forever. It was so cold and ugly, and I have a lot of videos and pictures from that. And we come in, and I'll show you. These are our boots, red. We do them in red, yellow, and blue, which are the colors of the Romanian flag. And I can just hold up a little bit. This right here, I don't know if you can see it,
Yeah,
but red, yellow, and blue. And, our logo has always incorporated the Romanian flag, Roma Free
that's
for All.
awesome.
But we pull up in this gray and gloomy village, and it's Christmas Eve, December 24th. I'm thinking my wife and daughters are probably at North Park Mall enjoying the beautiful lights and the festivities and the music. And I'm like, there's no indication that it's even Christmas. And as we pull up with these bright red, yellow, and blue boots, and some other ones here that we're doing, man, it's like Christmas came to this town, and these kids just start coming out of their houses, and you see like chimney and smoke and everything, and they just come out, and their faces are all like, some have their father's shoes on, some no shoes, broken shoes, and we begin to put red, yellow, and blue boots on all these kids' feet, and their parents come out, and they're happy, and they're singing, and I'm just in awe. I'm like, wow, wow. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I really want to do this all over Romania. All over Romania. I want to be able to give poverty the boot. I want to be able to help these kids. And little did I know, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, that, 15 years later, we would still be doing this, but we would have donated now $10 million worth of boots in 35 countries around the world. And even that moment when I was there in Romania, it was almost another one of those moments where I gave up. Neiman Marcus gave me 1 week off, that's it. And there was such a bad snowstorm in Europe that winter. You can, even Google it right now or look on ChatGPT that flights were canceled for like a week straight going into Europe. They just kept canceling flights. So I'm stuck for 3 days at JFK Airport because the flights are canceled. And I remember calling my wife because the idea was that I would go and make it back by Christmas. And I told my wife at the time, I said, I'm stuck 3 days here already, and I said that would give me only a couple more days and I would miss Christmas. I said, I think I'm coming back home. And she says to me, no, if you're already there, she's like, go ahead and follow through. And when we went to Romania, finally, I was able to get through to Venice. We get to Romania and I'm thinking, man, I'm missing Christmas with my daughters. I'm here. And the boots, I get a alert on my phone or an email that the boots were not going to be released. And I'm thinking to myself, no. So not only after 3 days of being stuck in JFK, I finally make it and I land in Europe, and then I find out that, well, tomorrow's Christmas Eve and tomorrow, the day after, is Christmas Day, and the boots are stuck. And I'm like, what do we do? So I'm there in Romania and I'm thinking to myself, man, was this a bad idea? Did I try to rush this? And I'm like, we got to do something. We got to do something. So we end up, I don't know if I can say this on the podcast, if it's legal to say it, but we end up bribing the person that was in charge or the warehouse where our boots were, because I found out that the reason that they were stuck, there's all this extra paperwork that needed to be done, and all the people that would need to help us to get that paperwork done were already out because of the Christmas season. They're
This is
already gone.
Romania.
Yeah, in
So they
Romania.
wouldn't
So
get
we're like,
released, so you could take them to the.
and I'm like, these boots are not for sale. These boots are not, I said, these boots are being donated. These boots are being given away to kids. And I said, can you at least, I said, there's like these boots, you can come, you can see what we're going to do with them. They said, no, you're going to have to come back after the holidays when it's all done. There's a week between Christmas and New Year that some of the offices may be open, but really January would be the ideal time. And I'm like, no, all these kids are going to be without boots. And so I'm like, can you at least let me see where our boots are to make sure that the boots are there? And so we finally set up a time on Christmas Eve, literally. And we go, and I'm like, I tell the guy that's with some other friend, I said, bring a van, bring a car. Let's go. I have faith that we're gonna get our boots out. And so I have this meeting with this guy, and I meet with this guy. I have photos with him too. I have photos that we're getting the boots out. And I tell him, I said, listen, my friend, I said, we're not selling these boots. This is my company. We're selling boots in the US. These boots are for donation. And I started this company to do this. I said, I'm already sacrificing my Christmas away from my wife, my 2 daughters, so I can do this. And I said, I really, really want to be able to give the kids living in poverty right now in the town of whatever these boots and help us to do that. Yeah, for Christmas. I said, help me do that. There's nothing for me to gain out of this. And he's like, I can't. You got to come. You got to fill out this paperwork. Look, do you need boots? Do you have kids? No, I actually asked him that. I said, do you have kids? And he said, I do. I said, well, take some boots for your kids. I said, take as many as you need if you need them, And he goes and gets some boots. And I said, let me just take some for these kids. He's like, okay, okay. And so he sort of turns away like that, and I tell our group, I said, go in there and get the boots. He knows what we're doing. He could tell what we're doing. He just couldn't necessarily give us, the green light to do it, but he basically did. And so if I go back to Romania after this podcast and they want to ride me or put me in jail for this, so be it. What we
There's a
did,
mandatory limitation. Don't worry.
we ended up stealing our boots back, stealing our own boots from this warehouse so we can give them to the kids living in poverty. And we did. We went and did them. And the minute we left, bro, I was like, I was so excited. So we knew when we pulled up with this white van into this village, I was already on cloud nine. But then to see the kids, the joy on their faces, to see them light up the way they did as we brought them the boots, I was just like, man, I was in that pure bliss, pure ecstasy. And I said, if only I can repeat this experience all over Romania. And then the God said, no, I'll do it. I'll multiply it all over the world. So 35 countries. Tanzania actually was the first country that you mentioned. That was the first country in Africa that we donated boots to, was Tanzania. So as we speak right now, we have 10,000 boots that just finished for Moldova. We had another 10,000 boots that are being produced for Central America. Last year was the first year that we donated 10,000 boots in the US during the hurricane in North Carolina. We were able to help out with that and help a lot of people there. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we would be donating boots in Texas in July. Texas is hot, it's dry, but we had a very bad flood here on 4th of July that killed, I think, 30 kids at the Camp Mystic in
Yeah.
Kirk, Texas, and more people, obviously, than that. I don't know the final stats there, but we were able to go 2 days after that happened there and bring hundreds of boots to those people that were cleaning up, people's houses were flooded, and just people were all over hill country in that area were affected by it. So we were able to do that here. But, the focus has been mainly outwardly, but even here where there's need, we always like to help. So it's been really a fun journey, man. 15 years, a lot of fulfillment. And I mean, on that giving side, on the selling side, it's been cool to see the company, being featured, in Warren School of Business, to be featured in Wired Magazine, Market Watch, Forbes, to be invited to share my story at Harvard, University, to be able to connect. We were in Romania with former Miss Universe, Demi Tebow, Tim Tebow's wife, donating 100,000 boots there to, Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war. And just to see how, every year now since 2013, we're on Good Morning America. And yesterday, we just secured a spot on ABC for November, and just those relationships that came out of it. I told you about this Day of Hope. Every year we do a special booth with the special artist for Day of Hope, and a few years ago we did a Wonder booth for Day of Hope, which was for the movie Wonder
The
that they wanted
movie.
to feature. Yeah, and then we also had, I think last year or 2 years ago now, we had a Jewish artist whose father or grandfather left Romania during the Holocaust with a mirror on his back, who he has in his house in Miami, my friend Lawrence. He's a pioneer and father of digital art. He actually worked with Andy Warhol, and he would just call me in 2020. I remember during the recession. I mean, during the COVID, not during the recession, but during COVID, he would call me, and he's like, "Hey, Samuel, I picked up your boots in the Barnes and Noble where they sell my toys," because he's got these toys with these graphic art all over it. And he's like, "I just started reading his story, and I fell in love, and I'm an artist." And I was just like, I would always be busy when he called me. I'm like, "Can you call me back?" You get a lot of calls like that. But he's like, "Hey, please give me a few minutes of your time." He's like, "If you want to look me up on Wikipedia, look me up or Google my name." And when I did, I was like, "Wow, this guy's legit." And so we did this really cool booth with him, which, like I said, Demi Tebow ended up sort of promoting as well and whatnot. And every year during this Day of Hope, we have the special booth. So we partner with various artists from around the world to do something cool. And then this year, we're looking at doing a very cool booth. We normally call it the Hope Boot, but in this case, we're going to call it the Life Boot. And so I told you earlier, my daughter, who could have been aborted, and by God's grace, she wasn't, has become this pro-life advocate. So she's working for an organization called Human Coalition, and working with Human Coalition now and possibly Live Action to create this boot that is called the Life Boot. So it's a fingerprint of the first baby they rescued. And so we're looking at doing that. So we just got the samples. Earlier, I told you when you called me up, I was unboxing the package that came in, and it was this, and they come in a few different smaller designs too. But this is our Chelsea boot, which is our style that sells the most, and then the Emma, which is the style that we've done really well with. This is what we started with, basically this style right here. But anyway, so every year we'll do something different. We have various partnerships that we've had, with Sadie Robertson, and the whole Tech Dynasty crew there. We took the whole family to Guatemala with us in 2015. It was just a remarkable experience, and we launched a special collection that we did for Nordstrom's, and then later on DSW and others. And it's been a fun journey, man. I
Ooh.
mean, just a fun journey on both sides with Roma Boots and with Roma Foundation.
So as you can see, I was really speechless because I think it's one of the you're first of all you're a phenomenal storyteller, and second of all it's a phenomenal story. I was gonna remark the creativity of that boot with the fingerprints. I mean, how meaningful is that? Whoever came up with that idea, it's brilliant. Because I mean, I'm walking around. People could now ask, "Hey, what is that? What? Why do you have that?" And I could see the amazing stories that get spun off of that. I know my wife has your boots too, and you graciously gave me a pair also, and I wore them for a long time. She still has that boot. Um,
That's awesome.
that's awesome. So you mentioned Wonder movie, which I happened to see. How in the world did that happen?
They just reached out to us. Lionsgate reached out and said, "Hey, we love your message of hope and kindness, and we're producing this movie, motion picture based on this book." And it's so interesting because a year before, 2 years before, my daughter Ilona, who's a reader, she's read so many books and a writer, and she says, "Dad, look at this book," and tells me all about it. And when they're calling me to tell me about this book now and the movie, I'm like, hang on, is Augie the protagonist? And they said, yes, Augie. And I was like, oh, how cool. So Choose Kind was kind of their little hashtag and whatnot. So, of course, for the movie premiere, I took Ilona to LA, to Hollywood, and we were able to hang out with all the cast and Owen Wilson, who actually is from Dallas. I got to meet him, and he was the father there, Augie's
Yeah, yeah,
father. But it was
yep.
really a cool story how that all came to be. So, yeah, we've had other movies that Roma was a part of, that were able to do things like that. And then, of course, the Romanian connections as well, Pro TV, doing various stories on us, documentary and things like that. So just
Yeah,
these
I've seen
cool
that.
things that came, out of just yeah, not something that we sought out. They just came out of, I want to say out of nowhere, but they didn't come out of nowhere. They were, like I said, divinely engineered. God had his hand on it. So that's been really cool to witness.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fascinating story. Yeah, like I said, when I kind of found out about you, I think one of my friends, Emma, was a good friend of mine, sent me your story or something, or maybe I already knew. But anyway, she sent it to me. I'm like, hey, check this out, because she knew we were involved with, helping the needy and things like that. And I don't know if it was around that time I started our coffee shop and ice cream brand, and we wanted to give back as well in the form of water. And remember, I wanted my employees to wear like Tom shoes and shirts that were also doing the same thing. And I eventually your boots was an option, but I'm like, I'd love to have them wear the boots in a store, but it wouldn't work, you know. So for a
Yeah.
while they're wearing Toms with that, and that's when I kind of reached out probably. But anyway, a lot of people were inspired by I think seeing your story on ProTV and Good Morning America. Anyway, fascinating. So I'm just curious, even Good Morning America, I mean that is absolutely amazing that so they invite you back every year.
Yeah, and it's changed over the years, but I mean, initially they reached out. I was boarding a American Airlines flight, headed somewhere, and I got a call and said like, "Hey, I read your story. I really love it. I want to connect you to somebody who would like to feature your brand, you know." And I'm like, "Okay." And then they said they work with Good Morning America. I'm like, "Oh, okay, fantastic." And so we got to go on. They shared the story of how we give back, but they offered the boots at a discounted price. And I mean, sold like 5,000, 10,000 boots at once within a matter of minutes on there. And then they have different specials. They have like an Earth Day special. They have a segment that benefits local, you know, communities or whatever. It's different themes, you know, it's evolved over the year. But I think we've been like the only brand that has been consistently on since they launched the special, you know, in 2013. So going now on 12 years. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing with Tori
So
Johnson.
show us the boots one more time because I want the audience to see them. If you have a chance to buy them, where what is it? They would go to
Yeah,
your
so
website.
so this is what we do the most of, the Chelsea boot. These they come in various colors. They come in different prints and whatnot. The red, the yellow, and then this is a style that we actually launched when we first did. We did a taller, in fact, taller than this. This is called the Yama, and this also came in a lot of different colors. They're super comfortable. They have a triple layer insole. I mean, I would say what I took from Neiman Marcus were two things, and that was quality and customer service. So I knew we had a good story with Roma Boots, but I said if we don't have a product that is well made and we cannot offer exceptional customer service, it'll fizzle. So I knew that we wanted to weave that within the culture of Roma Boots, quality and customer service. So yeah, the boots are made well. They're affordable. You can find them at romaboots.com. We have them in various stores around the country. We used to be sold Nordstrom, DSW, major stores, and then we did have a big, big fallout in 2022 due to COVID. So where we lost a lot of our big accounts. We had 5 40-foot containers that were stranded in Long Beach, California for several months. And that was because of the incompetency of the prior administration that just basically killed small. A lot of my colleagues in the footwear world completely went under. I mean, co- the bigger companies didn't suffer as much as the small ones, and it was so harmful the way they handled that, where product was just product was already designed, sold, produced, everything, and shipped to the U.S., but was congested in the port of Long Beach, and they were just there for months, and then they finally got them out, and then when they finally got them out, you know, by the time they made it to Texas, normally it takes about 3 to 4 weeks from when they leave China to where they come here. And by the way, we don't only produce in China; we produce in Brazil, we produce in Romania, but you know, and we're looking currently to transition to Colombia. The tariffs obviously have made a big impact, you know, with everything else. So Colombia is like it's another option for us. But having said that, everything got stranded there, and that 6 month period was very difficult, where a lot of stores canceled their orders. You know, they never got in there. By the time we got the 5 40-foot containers, we had to build our own warehouse because we were just paying all these fees and whatnot. And the last 2 to 3 years have been quite difficult. We have pushed through, we persevered, and now we're, I would say, on the right track, regain momentum, and we're gonna go after some big accounts. Plus, the economy was not great either in the last couple of years, so we're seeing a rebound for sure.
So if anybody's watching, first of all, they want to buy the boots. They're awesome. I wore them. I still wear them. I have a pair. I love wearing because it's really easy to jump in and go. And my wife loves them. But so check out romaboots.com. But maybe there's some retailers out there or people that work at retail maybe who knows where this could go. Please give Sam a reach out to Sam. We'll try to put his information in the description here. But Sam, I also want to mention I went with you on a boot drop. I happened to be in Romania at the time. That was a really cool experience, and especially I think Demi was there. That was a really nice treat that we got to meet Demi Tebow, which Tim Tebow is I'm a huge fan. I mean, you don't understand. That was really cool. I didn't meet Tim, but I met his wife. She was really nice, very down to earth. It was an amazing experience. But I'm a huge fan of Tim Tebow, so that was a huge
We got
treat for me.
we gotta invite him on the next boot drop.
I'm gonna hold you to it. Yeah, yeah, he's definitely a guy I'd love to meet. From the when his story popped on the national screen, let me tell you, I don't like football. I never cared about football, but when he played, I probably knew every little detail about him, and including all the other teams, because I was so fascinated with this sort of comeback story, and then his whole
Yeah.
story with almost being aborted. I just felt like it was an amazing story. So if you ask my friends around here, they'll tell you I was, major crush on Tim Tebow in that sense. Like at the time, I was
That's right.
posting it. So having to go on this boot drop with you and ministering in that way to those kids in Romania, we happened to be there. My wife was majorly impacted by the experience. So I'm involved with Charity Cup, but ironically, she's never been on the mission trip yet. We haven't had a chance. We want to go, but so that was like a mini mission trip for us, and she
Uh-huh.
had an amazing time. You serving those kids and that we saw firsthand.
Yeah, it
It was
was
really
cool to
cool.
have you
So
guys join us.
yeah, thank you. That was awesome, and yeah, that's how I got to kind of get to know you a little bit better. But I'll tell you another element besides Roma that it really struck me, and I wanted to have a conversation with you. Besides Roma, which like I said, that was really the part of. But I was just surprised how bold you continue to be, although maybe at the risk of losing some business or people turning away from Roma, if you would. I was just surprised how bold you were in the last few years on social media and just speaking the truth that you felt and not worrying about the consequences. I don't know if you want to share anything about that experience,
Uh,
um,
well, I
or
think,
maybe to you that's nothing. I don't know. Maybe you don't even think about it. But I'm telling you, watching from the outside, I was like, "That's bold. I want to be like that."
oh, that's encouraging to hear. But there's been times where I've done interviews and I was told that they're not going to publish it because of my views or whatnot, and I was okay with that. There's been times where I received a lot of messages from friends or acquaintances, on social media, where of all people, how can you support this racist person? How can you support so-called racist person? Let's just talk about Trump, because I like Trump from the very beginning. I like Ben Carson. I actually met Ben Carson at an event before he ran for president here in Dallas when I was starting Roma Boots. And one thing that really inspired me about Ben Carson was how he grew up in extreme poverty, and his mom would make him read books from a young age, and his brother ended up becoming a rocket scientist, and he becomes a neurosurgeon. And I'm like, these people, wow, crazy what education means and reading. So I instilled that into not only my own daughters, to read, and I would reward them for every book they read, but I also said that the only way to break the cycle of poverty is through education. So you can give a man a fish, you feed them for a day, teach them how to fish, feed them for a lifetime. So our goal is not just to donate a lot of boots, but to actually educate these kids. So we always connect them to local learning centers. We build some learning centers in the past, funded learning centers, and we used to stuff all the boots with school supplies. Our mission is to give poverty the boot, and that is to break the cycle of poverty. Having said that, when I met, a lot of that came from Ben Carson, and I was very much inspired by him. And later, I got to share this story with him a couple of years ago when we met again at it could have been a Charlie Kirk event actually. So I got to share my story, how he inspired me as far as Roma goes. So when he dropped out of the presidential race and he endorsed Trump, I said, wow, this guy's a smart guy. He's endorsing Trump, and I already kind of liked uh, Trump as a businessman. So I got behind him, and I'm telling you, this was early. We were getting tons of publicity at the time. We had just partnered with Sadie Roberts in 2015. We were getting all kinds of press, all the various publications were running so many stories on us. And I'll never forget, a major newspaper interviewed me about mm, about Trump being a racist and putting kids in cages and this and that, and what do I think about that? And I said, I don't think that's true. I said, I don't think that's true. And we donate boots in Mexico, we donate boots all over, but I don't think that's true. And they pushed back and they said, well, do you actually support him? And I said, I do. And they never published the article. And then after that, I would post things during COVID. I mean, this happened between 2015 and 2020, where there was a lot of flack because I supported Trump, but I'm doing this. They said, of all people, how can you support somebody racist? Somebody, you're an immigrant. You're an immigrant. Why would you do something like that? He hates immigrants. And we finally launched a men's line of boots. We launched a men's boot, the one you probably wore, and I named it the Trump. And
Oh,
I had
really?
several. I named it the Trump because we needed a name for the men's boot. And oh gosh, I had people in the office just go crazy. No, that's terrible. I'm gonna quit if you do that. And I cowered. That was one time where I cowered. I should have kept it the Trump. But I did. I pulled back and I said, okay, I don't want to stir up any unnecessary controversy, but I was so inspired by Trump and what he was doing, just like great things that I said, we just needed a name. All my boots have a name. And I said, let's name it the Trump. It's a men's boot. We did it. So here we are in 2020. COVID happens. It's the same thing. I, I was very vocal. I said, look, we cannot be afraid as believers, as Christians. We should have the most faith. We shouldn't have fear. And I got banned. My YouTube channel, Facebook, I would constantly get suspended and whatnot. People reached out to me. I care more about money than I care about helping people. That's why I'm keeping my store open because I refuse to close our store. And even the boot drops, we would do boot drops, and I would have to, obviously wear masks in our boot drops. I would do boot drops and get quarantined for a week. And I honestly, it's love, man. And I know that it sounds a little bit cliche, but it is. Love will make a way. Love will cast out all fear. Love will cause you to risk things, to put your reputation on the line, to sacrifice. Love will cause you to, even lay down your life, if that's what it takes. And so I said, I want to love like Jesus, and I want to be able to have people that look at us and see the love of Christ in us, and the love of Jesus, and that's it. I mean, that's the. Sometimes I say I'll deal with the consequences later. If my motivation is amor, if it is love, I'll just deal with the consequences later. Let the chips fall where they may. That's it. And so that's kind of my philosophy.
That's awesome, Sam. I know we've been speaking for quite a while here, and but every minute is like gold here. Um, I wanted to ask you, you recently this this podcast happens to be right after the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the memorial service that was heard around the world, and you happen to be there. Um, and not only that, but I'm at home. We're all watching this, like everybody's around watching, and here pops on the screen, my friend Sam. I'm like, no way, unbelievable. I don't know if I texted you in that moment, but of course, Sam is there. I'm not surprised. It's just that out of all those people, you were on the screen.
Yeah.
Maybe take us there for a few minutes and tell us what that meant to you and what caused you to go there.
Sure. Well, first of all, it was a pleasure to have the privilege to meet Charlie. I met him in 2019 at an event, at a Trump event, actually, at a church in Florida. And really inspired by his life, period, and what he's been able to accomplish at such a young age. That is just, that blew my mind. And then my daughter was part of TPUSA. She did a few various events, with Charlie. And I think the last event that we were at was in Arizona in 2023 at AmFest. And man, that a lot of great things came out of that. I had just returned from being in Israel on October 7th, and then the month after that, we shipped all these boots to Israel, and just because a lot of people were removed from their kibbutz that were all attacked around Gaza, and they needed boots, and so we were able to help out with that, boots and flip flops. And then my daughter's like, "Hey, Amfest is happening in Arizona," and Mercury One, who's the organization that we partner with, Glenn Beck's organization, The Blaze, gave me some VIP passes. So we said, let's go to Arizona," and we went there. And man, I remember writing down in my journal something that Charlie said at Amfest in 2023, and he said, "I want you guys to remember this Hebrew word, hineni. Here I am, Lord, use me." You know, And I remember writing that down, and of course, here we are. What, 2 years later now? Not even. Um, First of all, when he said, "Here I am, use me," he said, "Guys, the biggest fu to the system is to get married, have kids, and live a righteous life." Think about that. Pretty simple, right? But the biggest counter to the system is do that. Be a light, live righteously. And I was really taken by that. I'm like, that's it. That's the message. Like, I interacted with him via X here and there, during COVID, because I also liked him because he was bold. And I'm like, that's a guy that I like. So many uh, pastors and so many leaders were straight up cowards during not only COVID, but during any critical time, And I'm like, I like him. He's a guy that I would like to emulate, and because of his courage and his faith, and so I always admired him. But when he said, "Here I am, use me," and I remember being stuck in Israel on October 7th, I also said, I prayed to God. I said, "God, let me get back home, and I can get back home safely, give me another baby." And sure enough, 2 months later, I'm at this Charlie Kirk event, and his whole message was, have more kids. My wife couldn't get pregnant for 17 years. We already had Ilona, and we had Emma, and now 17 years go by, and we're not pregnant. So I returned from the Charlie Kirk event mid December, and my wife and I had just celebrated 20-year anniversary. And for some reason, I thought I started thinking she's pregnant. So I told her, I said, "I think you're pregnant." She's like, "No." So we'll see. So by the end of December, her period never came, and we realized she's pregnant. I'm like, miracle, truly. And so our baby Mila, came this past September, exactly a year ago. And Mila, is in Romanian means mercy. So it's
Yeah.
Mila Olivia Grace. We really felt like it was the mercy and the grace of God. But going back to this event with
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk, because it
So
all
you
kind of
so
ties in.
you exchange messages with Charlie on X, or is
Yeah,
it
yeah,
you
yeah,
interact? Yeah. Wow. So he
yeah.
responds.
Yes, yes, and always, I just love his heart. Charlie was he was such a unifier. He was such a connector. He was, man, all about raising a high standard of righteousness and fearless and courageous. And that's the thing. He got criticized a lot by the same people, I would say, that would oftentimes, or those same voices that would criticize me, for not putting my brand ahead of my conviction. I said I could never sell out my convictions. I just won't. So I'll never compromise. But in this situation, to be at his event, because the day that he got shot, I had just, well, I don't want to get into details, but I knew about it before other people did, and I was like, no, it can't be true. It can't be true, And once I found out that, obviously I saw the video like everybody else did. Man, it just stung. It stung so bad. And then when you really saw that he's gone, I'm like, man, that's a sting that we can never forget. And it was really because he lived a life beyond reproach. He lived a life that was so pure, so strong. And I think when he died, a lot of right wing media, right wing pundits, I would say, whatever, conservative, they could be conservative, they could be good people, but they get dirty sometimes. They'll get on the same level as the left, and they'll use the profanity and this and that. And, they're just F you, I'm MAGA or whatever, and it's like, man, Charlie was so different than all of that. He was alive because he didn't get himself dirty with all of that. He didn't contaminate himself with all that toxic, argument and whatnot. And I appreciated that about him a lot. So, so yeah, I, obviously was able to make it to his memorial. And the best thing in that memorial from the day that, I mean, from the time that it started at 7:30 when the worship came on, it just felt like, man, you're really in uh, a worship environment. You felt like you were in a church. It was like, wow. And this stadium is packed full of people. So, so yeah, to see the cabinet members of the Trump's cabinet sharing the gospel, globally, and to be able to share it. And JD Vance comes on and he's like, it is better, to be persecuted for standing for your faith than to compromise the kingship of Christ or to lose. It's better to be persecuted for your faith. So of course, naturally, I just stand up and clap. I'm like, yes, of course. And that was when I guess the camera zoomed in on me because I was like, yes, that's what I believe. That's what I stand for. The whole stadium should be standing for this. But obviously, not everybody has those strong convictions. But
I
that's
didn't know
really
that. I didn't
very
know that. That
powerful.
was kind of how the camera caught you because you stood up at that
Yeah.
point. I didn't know, but it
Yeah.
was in the middle of the speech. I remember that.
And I didn't know. My phone just started vibrating, but I was so caught up in his speech. And then Erica came on, and you couldn't hear a pin drop when Erica spoke. And it was just so powerful. And when she said, hey, I forgive him, it was just amazing. So it took a while before I finally looked at my phone, maybe about 45 minutes. And then when I'm seeing texts from people in Romania, in El Salvador, in Japan, in Israel, like, I'm like, okay, I saw you on TV. That's not what got me. What got me was the gospel just went to millions around the world. They got deployed everywhere. And I feel like I don't think I've ever been part of a event where so many people got to hear the gospel and experience worship the way we did there at that event. Not just millions around the world. I mean, the US, millions around the world. That was powerful, man. And I'm like, the way God can turn something bitter and ugly and make it so beautiful. Again, it goes back to that how all things work for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose. And then another funny thing with all this is, I finally, I leave that event. I come home. As I land at DFW airport, I open up my phone, Facebook, and just as I click on Facebook, a video pops up. It's an interview, live interview, but it was done 2 years ago. I didn't know that, but it's a live interview with Erica Kirk and with Lance Wallnow. Lance Wallnow happens to be a dear friend now. We've met several times. He's done stories on Roma. He's come there and he's telling Erica Kirk the Roma story in the interview as I'm opening this up.
You're kidding.
I'm like,
You're kidding
I'm
me.
telling you the truth. I'm like, so I
Because
text
she is
Lance.
involved with Romania, right? She was, so I could see
Well,
that.
I couldn't click rewind right then because it was a live interview. So I waited until the interview was over and I got to hear it again. He's basically, she's sharing the story of Proclaim, her clothing brand, and with him. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I actually interviewed this guy who started a boot company, blah blah blah. I went to his store, and he's sharing my story with her." But that's the very moment that I land, and I'm just like, "There's Lance Wallnau in America." So I click on it, and they're sharing my story in that very moment. And I'm like, "Man, it's interesting the way God works, and it's like these heavenly winks, that hey, I got you, or that it's just a reminder of His goodness and His love." And I've seen those miracles all throughout my life, and it gives me faith. It builds my faith. So I
So
texted him later and I told him, and he's like, "Yeah, that was a couple of years ago." So it was kind of cool.
that's amazing. This is wow. That is that is so cool. Um,
Had I
so
seen the interview back then, maybe I would have reached out and been like, "Hey, Roma Boots and Proclaim needs to partner up, to do something." Maybe while Charlie would have still been alive, but anyway, he didn't
maybe
broadcast it until later.
I mean, it would make sense as a clothing brand that probably has a purpose as well. So I could see the the synergy. So in that memorial, what, in your opinion, was the most powerful moment?
I think is when she said she forgave him. I really did. When Erica says, talking about Father, forgive us for, forgiveness and whatnot, and she shared, for Father, forgive them when he was on the cross, for they know not what they do, and how the implication there is that as believers in Jesus, we should forgive. And she said, that killer, that young man, I forgive him. I'm telling you, man, that was such a powerful and emotional moment. And there was also another moment where Brandon Lake had just finished worship, and then they were just playing music. They were just playing, and then everybody kind of puts up their "I am Charlie Kirk" or these posters that every seat had. Man, it was just such a beautiful, sweet moment. It just felt so heavenly, and you knew that Charlie was in heaven. He was in a good place, and it was, I don't know, every time I watch that portion of it, I'm just like, it takes me back to this glorious place. Yeah, it was really cool. And then, of course, the speeches. I love Marco Rubio. He was on fire, and Pete Hegseth, and then JD Vance were just really good, really bold. I never thought I would see again. These are like Secretary of War, Secretary of, State or whatever. These
I
vice
think
presidents
it's
sharing, it was just too much. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, what a time to be alive. Like, what a time to be alive. And this all happened in the last 8 months, since Trump's been president, that we're seeing this. And like, and then truly, this was a turning point. We're seeing just the best, like to be born for such a time as this. It's remarkable. So that's why I feel like we have to capture this season. We have to seize every moment. We have to make the most of every opportunity, because we've been given this window of grace. And if there's not a sense of urgency in your spirit, like something's wrong, because man, we have such an opportunity right now to do something good that can have ripple effects to millions around the world, or vice versa. You can do something evil that can also, through technology and everything, have ripple effects all over. So hopefully we use our voice, we use our abilities, we use what we have been entrusted to us, for good. And that's what I wanted to do with my life, and now I want to continue to do with my life. And that's what I encourage my offspring, my daughters, to do, because this life is a gift, and this life is temporary. But soon, based on how we live this life, based on whether we pass the test or not, you know, that's what's going to determine where we spend eternity, whether it's with God or forever separated from God. So
I think that's a great segue into what you told me is your next adventure, which is you said you want to start a podcast. Um, and if we can be of some kind of help when promoting it, send us the link. We'll post it
yes,
here, or later we'll post it if need be. Because I think that ties into what you just said. I mean, we got to take advantage of this time.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
it's I would say, even with the podcast, it came to me in January of this year. We were in a 21-day prayer and fasting, with our church, just to kind of kick off the new year. And on the last day of the fast, I just kept hearing Revelation 12:11, and I'm like, what is this? And they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and by not loving their bodies unto death. That means willing to lay down your life for what you believe in. And I love that verse. And I was thinking, like, our testimony, our word, sharing our testimony with others is so important because it gives people faith. It encourages people. And over the years, I've been asked many times by people to start a podcast, whether it's on philanthropy, on marriage, on fatherhood, on agriculture, which I love, on, different things, travel. And I just felt like, no, it's not the right time. I don't want to do it. I don't feel like that burning sensation to want to do something like that. But this, I actually felt like I should do. I'm like, I got to do this. I want to be able to do something to inspire others to share their faith. And, I kind of I wrote it down in January in my journal, and then of course February came, and March, and I said I want to launch it either in April or later, and then I said let me do it in September. September is a very special month for us. We always do another like 21-day prayer and fasting, and I said let me launch it in September, and I'll call it Testimonies, where people can share their testimony. Testimonies with Samuel. Now, little did I know that this very month, September, was when something as big as what happened with Charlie would happen, and he would basically be the first martyr and lose his life for standing for his faith and courageously speaking the truth. And so that was another highlight, like, hey, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, So I did the first intro actually just a Saturday before I left to go to his memorial. I did the intro. I left to his memorial, and we just kind of started. We did our first episode, which will be launching here soon, this past month. So yeah, you already gave me some good tips. I'm new to it. I don't know what I'm doing at all. I simply want to get the message out, other people's testimonies of how they came to faith, and again, redeeming the time because the days are wicked, and we want to be able to shine our light to others in this dark world, before our life expires.
Amen. Amen.
So
Brother, thank you so
that's
much.
all I have.
Yeah. Do it. So we started out in Banesh, right, in this village, 12 brothers and sisters, in poverty, I guess, essentially. And then we traveled, and you marvelously like laid out the story. You have a gift of telling a story, by the way. I was very captivated. And then here we are all the way to the pinnacle. Like you ended up at, essentially at the memorial, listening to presidents of the most powerful country, and then meeting a lot of, important, powerful people like Charlie and others. And I think that's an amazing journey that only God can weave that. And yeah, it's really, really interesting, the persistence and resilience you've kind of shown through the years. And all through that, when you kind of reach some success, a lot of people can, kind of veer away from the faith, yet you kept the faith. And not only that, but we're very bold about it. And I think that's remarkable. And that's what making your life count is all about, keeping that internal perspective. If you had a tip for people that are just starting out in life, what would you want to tell them?
Start with love, and let that be your motivation. Whatever you do, everything else will kind of come into perspective afterwards. If your motivation is not love, it doesn't matter what you do, how successful you can be in the world's eyes, how successful you can be to even your own family. If love is not the motivation, I think that uh, you deprive yourself of an eternal reward. And then the other thing is, what love does is love gives you courage because perfect love casts out all fear. So if you're truly motivated by love, all those fears become secondary. You're driven by something. So you have the courage to press forward. You have the perseverance to press forward if you truly are motivated by love because you're like, man, I love the people too much to care about what others think about me if I do this. I love the people too much to care about criticisms or any setbacks or financial loss, you know? And I think that's really it. Love will lead you to lay down your life for somebody and to lose it all. And so it's love.
Awesome, Sam. Great words of wisdom. So, Sam, last segment here before we wrap up this amazing story and podcast, I have a few words here that I want to show you, and if you can, this segment would be called perspectives. I want to get perspectives on different topics from different people. In 10 seconds or less. So technically, don't think about it too much. Just let us know what comes to mind. We'll see where this exercise leads. But I've done this before, and it was an amazing experience. So I'll just flash the card, and whatever comes to mind, if you would, just share that first thing. And all right, are you ready? So here we go. First perspectives with Sam. Politics.
Dirty.
All right. The next word.
Strong.
Economy, right? Okay. All right, here's the next one.
Bird. I'm thinking wealth. Fly. I don't know. Yes. Wealth can lead.
Sorry?
Wealth can, I think of riches, and how riches grow wing and fly. Like they don't last forever. Temporary. That's where I was going to go. Wealth, temporary.
All right.
Eternal.
Awesome. All right. Here's the next word, ironically.
With God.
Amen. Here's a different segment going into
dating to get married only.
All right. What's your perspective on this?
Love. I told you. The only thing that matters.
Amor. Roma. Very good.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
Covenant.
Awesome. This word.
Purpose. Without it, we're doomed.
Very good. How about this word?
Church. I would say that one is. Man, that's hard. That's hard because it needs to. Yeah, the bride of Christ. I mean, that's the way I see it. The church is the bride of Christ, God's extension. The word
Very
is
good.
ecclesia. I don't
What
want
about
to
this
get
word?
into it. Family. Family is where we belong. I don't know. Family is everything to me. It really is.
Awesome.
Coming from
All right,
Covenant
and then
12.
the grand finale. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Whatever comes to mind.
Jesus, salvation.
Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that perspective. Thank you for this time we spent together, Sam. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm pretty sure the audience will have an amazing time listening to it and be inspired. I think you inspired probably quite a few people, including me right now. So thank you for that. And hopefully we'll catch up again in the future. Keep us posted how the podcast goes and make sure you share it with us so we can share it. And I actually look forward to listening to the testimony. So thank you so much, and hope to see you. Like I said, well, give us some links that you want us to share here. If you have, social media or whatever you want our audience to know, let us know. So
Yeah, there's first of all, thank you for letting me share my story and letting me go so long. And what a pleasure to be able to do this with you, Dan. And I'm really humbled by the fact that I can share this. I would say without any restrictions, just sharing my heart, and hope it does bless somebody and hope it brings glory to God. So romaboots.com is the website. You can also go to romabootspoverty.org. That is our foundation website. And then I'm easy to find on social media, Bistrian, that's it. Or you can look up Samuel Bistrian on Facebook. There aren't too many Samuel Bistrian. I think I'm just the only one. And then also bistrian.com is my website. But yeah, I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I need to get on TikTok these days. So
is it
but
bistrian.com you said? That's your website?
yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And dude, keep Charity Cop in mind for a boot drop if you want. We'd love to collaborate with you. So
Yeah.
For the rest of the
Thank
audience,
you.
yep, yeah. For the rest of our audience, I want to thank you for joining us once again. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you on the next episode of Making Our Life Count. And in the meantime, make sure to do that. God bless. See you next time.